everybody. Thank you very much for joining us today. This is the 9th in our series of webinars for thinking about how you can use Oak National Academy's cooking and nutrition resources for your lessons in school. And particularly tonight, we're going to be talking about inclusive food education and adapting what's been written for Oak Cooking and Nutrition for learners with additional needs. And as usual, I'm delighted to be joined by Roy Ballum, who is going to be taking us through the presentation tonight and talking all about adapting the resources created, and also Sam Booth, who's the subject lead for design technology, which includes cooking and nutrition for Oak National Academy. So thank you both. Before we start, though, I just want to do a little bit about housekeeping. So Roy's going to be controlling the slides. If you can move on to the next one for me, Roy, that would be great. So thanks, Roy. So housekeeping. So the webinar will be recorded and will be available on the Food Effective Life website in the next couple of days. If you have any questions, if you can please type them in the chat box and they'll be answered at the end. And then we'd be very grateful at the end of the webinar if you could please complete a short online evaluation. It will take you about a minute to complete. And once submitted, you will be given a link to a downloadable certificate. Please download that certificate, add your name to it and print it for your records. And on the screen, there is a QR code for you to follow, but we'll put it back later on if you need it. So thanks, Roy. So what are we going to cover today? So we're going to be looking at adapting the Oak food curriculum for pupils with additional needs, thinking particularly about the curriculum strengths for learners, and Roy's going to go through those, but thinking about structure, progression, flexibility, and also the clear use of vocabulary. And that's something that both of us, when we were actually developing these resources, really liked the idea that it's got key vocabulary that learners are encouraged to use. Practical ways of using and adapting Oak food lessons and materials, and then also reviewing your CPD opportunities, because there's lots of things, as well as attending these webinar series, that you can do to support your own CPD back in school, and then also some of the next steps. So I'm now going to hand over to Roy, and he's going to take us through this presentation. So thanks, Roy.
Thanks ever so much, Frances, and good evening, everybody. Thanks ever so much for joining us. So I'm just going to introduce this and I'm going to hand over to Sam. But when Frances and I got the opportunity to work with Sam and Oak, it was really great, because what we've managed to produce over the last year or so is a great Oak food curriculum. And it's a new curriculum built from the ground up, based on the national curriculum. And we're going to be going through this tonight. And it's also built on the Food Effective Life programme. Now, I'm sure many of you are aware of that programme, and it's got some great resources for pupils with additional learning needs, which we're going to touch upon a little bit later too. We've also got some great curriculum explainers, which are available too, which is really helpful to get an idea around the aims and the objectives and the rationale of the different curriculum. And what I think is super is that there's 108 lessons there for you from key stages 1, 2 and 3. And you can really pick and mix those, and they're fully editable and really, really important, totally free as well. And we're going to look at some of those editable aspects later on. And of course, they're free, so you can download them straight away. But really what's really key, and I think this is what we're having this session tonight about, is that they're built around the Oak Way and its principles, one of which is also around pupils, supporting pupils with special needs too. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand over to Sam, who's going to go through the Oak curriculum principles. Thanks, Sam.
Thanks, Roy. Hello, everybody. Brilliant again to have you all. So yeah, our kind of Oak curriculum principles. So every single one of our lessons, all our resources, whether it's a worksheet or a slide deck, are built using these principles. And you've probably seen them if you've been on our website or you've looked through our resources. And obviously the first one is knowledge and vocabulary rich. That's a key one for us. Substantive and procedural knowledge built over time using rich vocabulary that also is sequenced, and we've mapped that across the curriculum. Really important to remember as well that substantive and procedural knowledge work together. You know, they are interrelated, and that could be something like using knowledge of food science in a practical food lesson. You've got a nice example there of how we build that. We are sequenced and coherent as well. We thought very carefully about how we are going to structure our curriculum from start to finish, key stage 1 all the way to key stage 3, which again is absolutely brilliant. And a way we can do that is, and the way you can look at that is by looking at our threads. We look at prior knowledge, of course, with that, and then our threads are those real key moments of knowledge, the key pieces of knowledge that are woven throughout our curriculum. That's why we call them threads. Now, if you haven't looked at the threads, I strongly suggest you go and look at those, and you'll see how they are built through units, through years, and also through key stages, and how we build on that to make sure we have that sequence. You can even select threads on our website as well. So if you select a thread, it will then highlight it and it'll show you. And I know that Roy has showcased that on previous webinars, so go and have a look at that if you wish. Evidence informed. We are very much evidence informed here at Oak, and as just like the British Nutrition Foundation are as well. And we're grounded on lots of different types of research, whether it be educational research, it might be subject specific, it could be government guidelines, government recommendations, but it's all in there. But what you'll find in a lot of our resources, just to name check a few of those, are things like Sweller's cognitive load theory, and I'll talk a little bit about that a bit later on. But also things like Myers principle of multimedia learning. I hadn't really heard of that before I started looking at Oak, but that's about how we address the issues of arranging things on slides and things like that. So we thought about that really carefully, mainly so you don't have to, so it's all done for you. And then, of course, as you flow through our resources, as you go through a lesson, of course, you will see Rosenshine's principles of instruction. That really jumped out at me when I first started working on Oak lessons. So on to the next slide then, please, Roy. Thank you. So flexibility, really important for me. I talk about flexibility a lot. This curriculum is adaptable. You can use as much or as little as you want. You know your pupils best. So it depends on your context, your resources, the pupils' needs, and also the teaching priorities that you have as well. And we want you to be able to adapt and amplify these resources. And we always talk about them being a great starting point. You can use them as they are. Everything is there that you need, but you can also adapt them to your needs. So that is really important as well. Diversity, obviously, super important, and we have embedded that throughout the curriculum, and embedded is really the key word there. This curriculum again reflects a huge range of cultures, foods, contexts, and different perspectives, and the idea behind that is we are broaden the pupils' understanding and experiences of food. And we've got other aspects of this as well. For example, we have a diverse range of school characters that we use throughout our curriculum as well. You might have met some of those if you have looked at some of our resources. We have them, getting prepared to cook and things like that. So we've really thought about that as well, the diverse nature of the subject. And isn't food a brilliant way of teaching that? Such a beautiful way of teaching that. And then, of course, the big one, which we're talking a lot about today, is that accessibility. Our resources are designed to support all learners, and actually if you have got great resources that support pupils with SEND, then you've got great resources that will support all pupils. And we do this through things like clear instruction, reducing cognitive load, so we don't put unnecessary things on our slide. We have an inclusive design format to all our resources, and also that flexible use again. So let's just have a look a little bit closer at a few of those. So first of all, it's designed to facilitate high quality teaching, which is a really powerful way of supporting SEND. And I think that sentence was taken from the Education Endowment Foundation guidance, which they had the reporting to SEND back in 2020, and we've used a lot of that report within our learning to help develop our curriculum. So we've got a focus on clear explanations, not just through verbal, but also through things like modeling or through demonstrations. Really nice example of that is our food skills videos, which you will see dotted throughout our curriculum, and again, brilliantly filmed. around, you know, really really explicit, showcasing you know, those food skills which we want our pupils to become you know, become competent in doing that. We also have checks for understanding. We have a lot of those. Again, we say they're peppered throughout our slide decks, and the reason for that is we want to make sure the pupils have understood what we said before we move on. We do that as teachers a lot, didn't we? I certainly did when I was teaching. Is you've got to get through the curriculum, you've got to move on, but have the pupils really understood that skill or that piece of knowledge before we move on. So we use our checks for understanding with that. And then of course we have our practice tasks. That's what we call them. They could be guided practice tasks, they could be independent tasks. So we've got that kind of restricted and expansive approach through that as well. And you'll find all our lessons chunked. So you'll find we chunk those, you know, so we chunk the information. We call these learning cycles. In our cooking lessons, we have 2 learning cycles, and within those you will see we have a check for understanding, a bit of an explanation, sorry, then a check for understanding, then a bit more explanation, and then of course we will then have our tasks. We don't put images in, we don't put lots of images in all the way over, sorry, we don't do redundant images in. What we do is we put images in that are high quality, that help to you know, enrich those explanations. So you will see, you know, lots and lots of images used throughout our slide decks, but they're there for a reason. Now if you want to take our resources and you want to add all sorts of other things in there and you want to add animations, you can do that, but we don't do that because we think, based on the research, actually that really helps our learners that have got special educational needs focus on what they need to focus on and reduce that cognitive load for them. And a really nice example of this is our reduced pictorial representation of the Eat Well guide. I think you'll all agree the Eat Well guide, it's quite a busy poster and it's there for a reason, and some pupils might find that slightly overloading, you know, for their cognitive load. So what we've done is we've produced a reduced one of that, which just focuses on some aspects of it so we can get across what we're trying to get across without you know, without having too much information on the screen. Now of course we're sequenced, but what we also do is you'll see we've got a very linear way in which we presented our curriculum. But once you dive into those resources, once you get into the lessons or you're watching a video, we actually don't reference year groups. And that's again because we want our resources to be able to taken by you and then used wherever you see fit. So we don't reference that within the actual resources. And I'm actually working with a school now where we've taken some of the year 6 units and we've brought them up to year 7 because we really want to embed those skills and that understanding and that knowledge before the pupils move on. And then some of the little things which you know, a lot of people don't think about, and certainly as teachers we don't have time to think about. We use accessible fonts, so our fonts are actually what we call dyslexic friendly. You know, they're easy to read fonts, so we thought really carefully about that. We have high contrast colors. You're not going to find light writing on a light background or dark writing on a dark background. That's the one I can't read. And we also caption our videos. So pupils have the option to either watch the video and listen to the narration by Roy, who will be teaching all the lessons, or they can read the captions. And of course, for Key Stage 1, we're just finishing a project now where we're going to get all our lessons signed for pupils who are deaf, because they will often learn to sign before they can read. So we're doing that as well. So we thought really carefully about all this to try and support all those pupils with special educational needs. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Sam. And I must admit, as being involved in writing some of this, it's been great to actually have this oak structure put there, because it's really helped when you write lessons. And I think it will be really helpful when people look to adapt and amend them as well, moving forward. So, okay, Francis, all good?
Yeah, that's super. Thanks, Sam. I will leave the rest to you, Roy.
Lovely, thank you. And just sort of summary of what Sam said there. So we've got some great slide decks in the Oak Food curriculum. There are lots of worksheets. There are quizzes. There are lesson videos, which are delivered by me. There are lots of recipes, about 72, 74 recipes, and there's additional information as well for you, the teacher. So there's a lot that you can use. And what's really important, Sam said, there's no reference to a year group on this information. So you can use it as you see fit. You can pick and choose any part of any resource to support your teaching and learning. Fully editable, so you can make it your own. That's really important. Open government license, so you can use whatever you want. And really important, I always love it as an ex-teacher, they're free. So what's not to love, eh? So what we're going to do now is move to the next part, which is all about the curriculum strengths for learners. And this section is really about the strength of the curriculum to support your teaching and learning going forward. And I think the key thing that we've already focused on, the principles, is that you've got Oak already as the foundation. So a lot of this work has done, all the heavy lifting has been done for you. And I think it's a great starter for 10. Now, Sam has mentioned already, there are things like units and threads throughout the whole curriculum from year 1 through to year 9. And the general way in which the food curriculum is constructed is in each year group, there are 4 units and they cover cooking, healthy eating, where food comes from, and then also a social context too. And all of them have rich content and their vocabulary, the key words have also been put there. And you can also split lessons as well, or just focus on one aspect if you don't have a lot of time, or perhaps you want to really focus on some fundamental food skills. You just use what you want in your lesson. Sam picks upon very quickly about the threads that run right the way through the curriculum too. And you can see on the right-hand side of the screen, these are the different threads that are available in the cooking and nutrition curriculum that you can access. And you can click on one of those, and when you click on it on the Oak website, it automatically filters the different lessons for you, which is really, really good. And I think it's great to have things looking at sensory work, for example, and that can be quite a sensitive thing, but it's, you know, eased in, very gentle, quite fun, light-hearted, because we know not all people want to do tasting, but perhaps it might be something on culture, for example, linking to different diverse pupils in your classroom. All the lessons, and we can't stress this enough, they're just flexible. So you just use what you want. And we've got that progression built in over time, but equally you can use them as standalone lessons too. You just pick and choose what's good for you, and you know your learners the best. There's also this structure that's been built in at this curriculum level too. So just for an example here, we've got the year 7, 8 and 9, the Key Stage 3 units displayed on the screen. So we've got this structure, this sort of helicopter view going over the top. And we've got this for Key Stage 1, 2 and 3. And even if you start looking at the unit titles, even the titles give you a hint and show some progression running forward. And when you click into a unit, you can then see when you click into the overall units, you can see each year in more detail, as well as start to filter that for different year groups, as well as the threads too. So you've got this good structure built at a top line curriculum level. And we've got that progression in there. So all of the information that you can possibly want is accessible for you. So from year 1 right the way through to year 9, it's all here. And this is what we've put here is an example of all the different learning. So you can actually go into this and pick and choose the bits that support your pupils in your school. Just some great learning objectives, some key learning points that you can use. There's also structure at a lesson level as well. And again, this is consistent for the 108 lessons that are there. So it starts with some really interesting key learning points, really sometimes quite succinct, which I think is great. There are those key words, remember that vocabulary development that we mentioned. I also like the misconception that's there, and it might be a great way to start a lesson. Just to get people interested, just to talk about food as we go through. There's also a really nice teacher tip that's there that you can use and think about and how you might act upon this in your own lesson too. And obviously there's a little bit about equipment if you need that too. So you've got curriculum level structure and then a lesson level structure, all to help your teaching and learning. And we really wanted to focus on those sort of key words, that vocabulary rich as well. And we've just got a couple of slides on here, but all the lesson has lists of key words. And this is all from the Education Endowment Foundation, that research, that evidence base that Sam referenced at the very beginning. And what I've done is I've put the links on here. And when you get this presentation, you can click through those links and get that sort of that evidence yourself to have a look through. So it's really important about extending that vocabulary introducing new vocabulary, that repeated exposure to new words as well, and those opportunities to use new words that I'm sure your pupils would want to use. And you can just see some of the examples here on the right-hand side. The other key one was that flexibility. So this is all strength in to support your teaching and learning. So they're really easy to download. Now, I was testing the system, which I always like to do, and you can actually get them, you can download the whole unit. So very top line, download everything. You can go into a lesson and download all the lesson, or you can download the individual resources as well. And it shows you whether it's sort of a PowerPoint or a Word, or for example, a PDF too. So it's very easy to download in bulk or individual items. That gives you the flex. They're also very easy to edit, and you can just pick and make them your own. So that flexibility has been sort of baked in at the beginning. Now we're going to quickly move on to that practical ways of using and adapting these OAK lessons and materials. Now, what I would suggest is first of all to think about your own curriculum, what you offer, and think about your own planning. So one of the first things that we've produced a guidance around is about doing a very short sort of guide and audit about developing your own curriculum. So what do you want to teach? What's important for you in your school with the pupils that you have? And you can do this as a very short audit, and you can see what you currently do and how OAK could potentially help to fill in the gaps. And therefore you can then look and adapt to new ways of teaching going forward. And you get some great recipe ideas and some top tips for your lesson too. And when you're adapting the lessons, clearly you can download all the plans, for example, which I showed you. So the Excel chart, which we can see in the top right-hand corner, you can download that, and it's got all the links directly to the units and also into the individual lessons. But you can very clearly see the lesson title, the outcome, which is I can. So it's very good, clear, easy speak for pupils to understand, as well as all the key learning. And you can use that thinking in your own planning your own curriculum in school. You can then tweak the lesson plans that are available, making it more appropriate for you too. And what I love to do as well is to use the AI tool to create lessons that are more appropriate for you. So just on the bottom of the screen here, I had a little dabble the other day, and I just put in that I wanted it to create a healthy eating lesson for year 5, and I got a range of learners with additional needs, and I wanted to make sure that it was clear, uses key vocabulary, and so it doesn't confuse people. So that was my prompt to start with. And as the system goes through, it asks you another questions, and it stops and makes you think and reflect, but you can also tweak it. So in the next box, just over to the right, in the little sort of grayed out part, I've actually typed in make the lesson shorter because it was too long. And I've decided for the pupils I have, that would be far too long or too complex. And then I also then put to simplify it as well for pupils with SEND. And on the right-hand side of that box, you can see how that lesson is then coming together. So if you haven't used that yet, I would have a look on the OAK National Academy website. It's a great way to start thinking about your lesson planning, as well as get some great resources as well, which is you can tweak and make them really bespoke for your classroom. When you're amending resources, of course, you've got lots of choice to go through. And as Sam mentioned, a lot of the heavy lifting's been done by OAK already based on that evidence base. But you've also got the ability, obviously, to adapt and tweak those PowerPoint presentations or Google Slides and Word docs and so forth. You can see just some examples on the screen, and they're not too intense. We really did think really carefully when we were putting these together. But the key things, obviously, you can change some of the language, the font size, the colors, the backgrounds and layouts that might be appropriate. You might want to reduce the content further, or perhaps expand something. You might want to focus more on hand washing, for example, or how to cut using a knife safely, and other stuff, can move into the background rather more. And you might want to remove or perhaps even add additional images as well. You might want to show stages of a process rather than just one image that's representative of that area. And of course, you can then save them and use them. And when I was teaching as well, obviously you get feedback from the pupils, don't you? So you can reflect and you amend them again, so that all the time we're also improving going forward. So it's all around edit, cut, paste, and make it your own. And that's the real kind of key thing with the Oak. So you've got all the Oak materials there. So not just the 108 food and nutrition lessons that are available, but remember that AI tool that you can also use to tweak and create your own lessons. But also all the information that's available on Food: A Fact of Life as well. And in fact, if you haven't seen on the website too, there's actually a whole area dedicated to pupils with additional needs too. So have a look at these two websites, think about cutting and pasting, and you can create and make your bespoke resources yourself. Of course, there's lots to download as well to save you a lot of time going forward, and of course, lots of money too. So I'm now going to quickly just go through some of the CPD opportunities that are available that you can download and start to use. So we've already talked about audit what you do and discover what you don't do. So on the Food: A Fact of Life website, there are some audit tools, some smart planners, some guides to talk you through curriculum planning that you really might find helpful, perhaps individually, as a department, as you go forward. I would then suggest that you do go through those planning guides and then use a smart planner to make those goals, to actually make you think about how you're going to go forward, and also to think about what does success look like too. There's lots of training and resource guides available, and we've put these into some interactive PowerPoints like decision trees, just to make it a bit more interesting to find out what training is most appropriate to you, but also about what resources might be of most interest to your teaching too. And there's also some curriculum planner decision trees, which look at the amount of time you have available and the sorts of lessons that you could teach in that time. We've also got all of the previous training sessions. So tonight is number 9, but there's 8 previous sessions. So all the recordings and the PowerPoint presentations are available on the Food: A Fact of Life website for you to download. There's a huge amount of information here. And of course, we would really urge you to review and use those Oak materials too. They're great. There's lots of them, and they're just being made for you. You can get all the information as tonight from the Food: A Fact of Life website following that link. And again, when you get this presentation, you'll be able to click right the way through. There's also further support from Food: A Fact of Life. As I mentioned, there's a dedicated area for pupils with additional needs. And it's great that's on there. Again, it has information around healthy eating, cooking, where food comes from. There's also recipes and videos as well. I love the videos because they feature pupils from different special needs schools, for example. So you've got that sort of peer-to-peer work going through. There's even some widget symbol recipes as well, which I think are absolutely fantastic. There's also a great characteristics of good practice document as well, which you haven't seen that yet. I would really recommend downloading and having a look. There's some really good top tips and some great case studies of work being done by teachers throughout the UK and looking at additional needs. And there's also on Food: A Fact of Life, there's a news blog section as well. And there's a great article by one of the trustees, which is a teacher, who teaches in special needs school, and she's done some great work looking at the neurodivergent learners. So again, a really great read, and then some links to further information too. So if you haven't seen it, I'd recommend going and have a look. There's also further support from Oak that's available. Again, there's some great blogs looking at the research and insight that you can get available to support pupils with special needs. What I've done here, I've simply put the links on for you to have a look, have a read, and get some more information. And as I mentioned, I'd also really recommend having a look at the Oak AI tool. It's been created just for you, just to really support education. There's lots of safeguarding involved, and it's really great to produce lessons that are bespoke just to you, and you can really tweak it and really hone that down. But it's based on all the curriculum information that Oak has. So I think there's a great sort of safety thing there as well, and also some rigor that's built into the system. So if you haven't looked, I definitely recommend go and have a look. So Francis, that's me done. I'm going to hand over you to next steps. Thanks ever so much.
Brilliant. Thanks, Roy. And thank you again, Sam, for your outlining of the curriculum principles. Really, really good to hear. So some next steps for you. So do check out the Oak curriculum and lessons. Just have a look, see which ones might suit you and your particular pupils and your setting. Audit what you currently do and identify any gaps. Roy's talked through the different resources that are available for that. Try out a few lessons, worksheets and or recipes and get a taste. We haven't really covered recipes tonight, the Oak recipes, but there are some fantastic ones there for you to try and use with your pupils. And then use the tools to help on Food Effective Life. And then do join us for the last training session. And that one is around independent learning for pupils. So I think that will be an interesting one to have a look at. So we've mentioned before that we've been doing a series of training, and this is number 9, and the links are all available on the website for you to have a look back and actually watch any on catch up and have a look at the PowerPoint presentations as well. Thank you, Roy. So any questions? I've had a quick look in the chat and there aren't any questions from the teachers that have joined us, but I have one question that I'd like to ask you, Roy, first of all, and then
Sure.
Sam to add in later on if he's got any other questions. So it was really just thinking about everything we've talked about tonight and sort of your knowledge of teaching and experience of working with pupils with a wide range of additional needs over the years. What would be your top 3 tips?
Thanks, Francis. I suppose, although I haven't taught in a special needs school, I've taught with lots of teachers that have, and their experience, their joy of teaching, when I've seen them teach food and nutrition to the kids, one of the key things that really is a driver is making it hands-on, making it practical, that it's that sort of reality. And it's also not just about the abstract, it's about sort of everyday skills, for example, that they might go through, and using those recipes that work, that they enjoy making, they like as well, and broken into very simple steps. So I think the first one is definitely that hands-on, and I think teachers just explain that so well. Obviously with that as well, there are some issues which we've referenced tonight around sort of the sensory part, and maybe not too keen on tasting and other things. So I think teachers are very good with this. So the other bit was obviously not really any pressure, but also making it slightly light-hearted as well. And I think that's a key one. So I think we need it there, but I think we obviously can't force people. We would never do that. But I think there are just some additional issues with that. And the third one, I always remember going to some great schools when we were doing License to Cook for the government, and just looking at the different adaptive equipment that's available as well, just to make sure everyone joins in. And even from pupils that are just touching ingredients, because actually they can't actually make anything, but they're understanding that sensory characteristic by touch, through to using switches to start motors and to start blenders and so forth. There's so much that is available. So if you're teaching in a special needs school, brilliant, well done. But to me, it's always about making it practical. It's a rich learning area, and I just think teachers do an amazing job. But in all of it's to enable kids to have that great food experience.
Fantastic, thank you. And I always think the food is just such a wonderful vehicle for transferring knowledge from school and to home. And you're talking about everyday experiences. And then also we've done some work around independent living and how food can really support young people with their developing their skills for independent living. So I think it's fantastic. And Sam, is there anything else that you can add to that?
Not massively. I think for me and from my practice, and I worked with a brilliant food teacher, and it was knowing your pupils. And the great thing about food education is the fact we actually get a load of time to talk to them and walk around and speak to them, especially if it's in the practical nature of the subject. And this food teacher in question had a pupil again, with sensory needs, and couldn't touch a lot of the ingredients. And she got to know the pupil, she got to know the parents and carers at home, parents or carers at home. And over the course of the year, this pupil became more and more confident, to the point where this pupil was then also cooking at home, because the enjoyment of actually creating the recipes for his parents, it was absolutely amazing to see that transformation, and hearing that from the parents as well, was brilliant. And that was because, again, of a fantastic food teacher, but also just because of the way it was done within the food classroom, which I think was brilliant. And that always, stuck with me. And I think the only other thing, it's that having that consistent structure, I think that's always worked well, with all pupils. It works well with all pupils, doesn't it? But I think having that consistent structure, so the pupils fully understand what is happening and when it will happen. And food education, we've got an advantage where quite often we will be following a method or following a recipe, and I think that really benefits all pupils, but especially those with educational needs.
Fantastic. Absolutely. Brilliant answers, both of you. Thank you very much. Right. Okay. So thank you. We've come to the end of tonight's webinar. Thank you very much, Sam and Roy. Your input is always invaluable to these events. So we'd be very grateful if you could please complete a short online evaluation. And then once you've done that, you'll be provided a link to a downloadable certificate. As we mentioned at the beginning, the webinar has been recorded, so it will be available online, and we will share the link. So thank you very much. Have a great evening, everybody, and we hope to see you for our next webinar, which will be around empowering learners and independent and remote learning. So thank you very much then. Bye-bye.